Hello and welcome to In the Envelope, an awards podcast. I am your host, Jack Smart, the awards editor at Backstage, your guide to the acting industry and the most trusted name in casting. We're here to talk with some of the contenders of the 2017 Emmy race, who share their advice on the craft and business of becoming an award-winning actor. This season of In the Envelope is brought to you by HBO.
And then I saw Robert De Niro do it, and I was like, he does it too!
Oh my God!
It's the humming thing!
I've never heard this.
Hugh always makes fun of me when I start humming. He's like, but it's really a good trick. So, all y'all, next time you're on a stop and repeat.
I've never heard this. This feels like a scoop.
It is. I can't believe I'm actually revealing that, but yes.
Yeah, really? You do this at the Met Gala?
All the time. I hum.
That was three-time Emmy Award-winning actor Claire Danes, who stopped by the studio for our very first episode of our very first season of In the Envelope. I'm here with Jamie.
Hello.
Jamie's here. Our producer. If I'm host, Jamie is producer.
Correct.
So those the titles, perhaps?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
What is it that you and I have done here together?
Well, we've interviewed some pretty amazing people is what we've done.
Yeah.
Well, you've interviewed them. I've sat back and watched.
And these are people from current Emmy-eligible TV shows. I can't reveal yet who we've had on the show, but we've conducted over a dozen interviews with Emmy contenders, Emmy nominees.
And quite a few nuggets of wisdom in there.
Indeed.
I would say.
Plenty.
Which I have already started to employ.
Amazing. Yeah, we asked about a lot of audition advice, which you said you've already found useful.
Yeah, I'm a voice actor myself, and I've got the inside scoop on this, as we've been working on it privately.
Yeah.
So I've got a bit of a leg up on everyone, unfortunately. Sorry, folks. But I have taken a lot from these interviews, actually.
Yeah.
And getting the advice from the top tier actors in the industry is really, really useful.
Totally.
To put it mildly.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of this advice isn't necessarily obvious and at the same time not overtly complex either.
Sure.
So I think it's stuff that you can apply quite quickly and adjust your philosophy and your mentality. Yeah, absolutely.
Totally. And we covered a lot of advice, sometimes also advice about awards and how to navigate that world because, look, you never know. You might turn in an amazing performance that gets noticed by enough people, including Emmy voters, and then you find yourself on an Emmy red carpet. We asked a couple of our interviewees who have handled that or who maybe, hopefully, will soon be handling that.
Yeah.
How to navigate that aspect of it, how to promote a show, how to campaign for an Emmy.
And what it means to them to win an Emmy. And interestingly, some of them were talking about what they get out of the Emmy process, not necessarily the glory, but some associated benefits as well. So
some of them are actually multiple Emmy nominees that I, for one, am just dying for them to become Emmy winners. And the exciting thing about this year in particular is that any of them really could become winners at this point. We're going to talk to a couple people from, maybe you've heard of HBO's Westworld or Hulu's The Handmaid's Tale, which are both new dramas that will be up for Emmys in the year that Game of Thrones, which usually dominates at award shows, is not eligible this year. And there's some amazing funny people that we've talked to. We talked to a couple of supporting actor and actresses in comedies.
And it gets very serious at times.
And it gets very serious. That's right. We also covered some limited series, the mini-series and the TV movies categories. We talked to a lot of people about Big Little Lies, which we might talk about later.
That's a recurring theme.
That was definitely a recurring theme. We asked a couple of recurring questions, too. Like, we asked a lot of people who their favorite actor is, what TV shows they're currently watching, what they consider to be great acting, which I thought we got some really interesting responses there for sure. Jamie, what shows are you watching? What are your favorite TV shows?
Well, we did just mention Big Little Lies.
Yes.
I just finished it. Don't want to give anything away.
And we're not just saying that because we're sponsored by HBO. We genuinely all love Big Little Lies so much.
And I did like Westworld, but that's also HBO. But I feel like I need to broaden out my variation. While I'm thinking, what shows did you...
What shows are on my mind now? I really enjoyed Feud on FX, which was Ryan Murphy's amazing period piece. I'm a huge Mad Men fan.
Yeah.
And Feud, for me, sort of filled the hole that Mad Men left behind a little bit with the period details of that. I also really liked another FX show called Legion, which is a superhero drama that was kind of given the prestige treatment by Noah Hawley. I'm also a huge fan of a couple comedies like ABC's Blackish, HBO's Girls, and Veep, obviously. Who doesn't love Veep? There's no such thing as a bad episode of Veep.
No.
And in terms of like favorite actors, I don't blame people when I ask who's your favorite actor and they can't come up with an answer, because how do you pick one?
Because it's always Meryl Streep.
It's always Meryl Streep. Yeah, and I feel like this year it's always Nicole Kidman, and there's always just like the actor that's on everyone's minds. Do you have like a favorite?
No.
You can't commit. You can't commit to a favorite actor.
Was it Shailene?
Shailene Woodley?
She was great
on the show.
Lies. Yeah, I thought she was very impressive.
Absolutely.
And Tandy Newton on Westworld.
Yeah.
She really stole the
robot.
show.
She totally steals the show.
Yeah.
I'm dying for a supercut of just her scenes.
Yeah.
It could be its own movie. There's just way too many great performances to choose from in terms of talking about them, but also in terms of just booking talent for this podcast. This is a big task. But I think we got some real contenders.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we covered most bases.
Oh, I want to say who they all are, but we have to reveal them week by week. So let's get to it. Let's get to these interviews.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
This episode is brought to you by HBO's original comedy series, Divorce, starring Sarah Jessica Parker and Thomas Hayden Church. Divorce portrays the experiences of a woman who finds that making a clean break is harder than she thought. For your Emmy consideration, an outstanding comedy series, and all other categories. Claire Danes, as I'm sure you all know, is a 3-time Emmy-winning actor known for My So-Called Life when she was a teenager, the 2010 HBO movie Temple Grandin, and, of course, Showtime's political drama Homeland, where she has won 2 Emmys for playing bipolar CIA operative Carrie Matheson. She walked over from her New York apartment into the studio, and here's our interview with Claire Danes. How are you?
I'm okay.
Are you in the middle of a bunch of press for Homeland?
I mean, I've done a spattering of press, but no, I wouldn't say it's a bunch.
Yeah.
I've definitely done more. I mean, the nice thing about being in your 6th season is that you don't have to keep introducing yourself. People kind of know. You have to gently remind them that you're still at
it. A thing. Yeah, I mean, you still have the loyal following, but every year your show gets awards attention, and so you got to go through the same.
Yeah, which is, a great privilege. But yeah, no, the effort is modest, and that's nice. So
yeah, because I was going to ask, like, we've talked to a couple of people who are on new shows, and obviously the press for that is huge.
Yeah.
And you go into your first season of a show, guns blazing, kind of.
Exactly.
But you've been on the show for 6 years. You have 2 more seasons, right?
Yeah. We just got back, just about a week ago, from our annual research gathering trip in D.C. When we camp out at a club in Georgetown and interview from 9 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. various characters from the intelligence world and State Department and
spies,
journalists. Yeah.
So amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's illuminating and disturbing, mostly disturbing.
I didn't realize is this an annual tradition?
Yeah. So one of our head writers, Henry Bermel, who died a number of years ago, actually, but he was a founding father of Homeland. His dad was in the CIA and mentored his cousin, who became a very high-ranking CIA guy and has recently retired and curates this event and calls on his buddies and yeah, it's a great thrill. And as I said, it's very dizzying and kind of unnerving.
Well, and it puts you in the context of like real world issues and
absolutely
current events, right?
Yeah, and everybody has an opinion and an insight and, a hope and an agenda that they're pushing forth, and we happen to have a platform that is powerful. So
well, and the other part, I feel like for you, that you've got this Venn diagram. You're doubly responsible because Carrie Mathison is bipolar and she has a lot of mental health issues.
Yep.
So do you see that as well as a responsibility, and certainly as a source of research and homework?
Yeah, I felt really protective of that aspect of the character, and and so did the writers. So do the writers, and we have been doing it for so long now. I think we can just assume that she's on her medication, and we know what that means. I mean, look, we're taking a lot of liberties here. I mean, there's no way that the healthiest of people could cope as well as she's coping. I mean, please.
Or be given the opportunities she's been given.
Yeah, but we need to at least indicate what might be, authentic, and honor, the people who are really wrestling with this condition, and that's been fascinating. I'm very moved by the stories that I've heard along the way, and that I've tried to cull from and tie into my telling of Carrie's story.
Absolutely, and those stories are from real people you've talked to before.
Yeah, so I mean,
at
the very start, before the pilot, I worked with, I had about a month to prepare, and I worked with a CIA officer who was very high-ranking and became my spy big sister.
Cool.
And she was incredibly generous with her knowledge and time, and took me to her home and into Langley, and introduced me to her colleagues, and was surprisingly forthcoming and available. And then I worked with a woman called Julie Fast, who is bipolar and has written a number of books about it. And I read Kay Jameson and every book I could on the subject. And I mean, it's funny that my guide's last name is Fast. Really? Come on. But it is true. I mean, it's called bipolar, but it could also be described as fast and slow.
I mean, even in the pilot, she's got her connection to jazz that she listens to that fast jazz. And
absolutely, yeah.
Almost
it's
triggering.
So funny because, I'm talking about her and I feel like she's coming back. And, sometimes, and it's been a month or so since, we wrapped, and just the other day, I was so grounded in my body again, and my identity is Claire. And I was like, she seems so irretrievable. And I was like, no,
interesting.
She'll come back, I hope. And I always think of her as like vodka on ice,
Whoa.
She'll be there. But yeah, it's so funny. There's so much muscle memory. And that's the real advantage and gift of working on a show for so long, is that you are growing with her in a parallel way, in real time. And, when actors talk about backstory a lot. So, when they're first getting to know a character, they try to fill in the blanks of the script and imagine the life that preceded the moment, that we find her in the telling of this particular story. But I don't have to do that. I've actually lived it. I've acted it out. That's an amazing luxury.
And of course, your relationship with the writers over 6 years, you start to shape their writing, and they start to shape your performance.
I mean, that's the other joy of television is how collaborative it is, and how much of a conversation it is between writer and actor. I mean, Winnie Holtzman, who wrote My So-Called Life, is still a dear, dear friend, and we still have a kind of psychic connection.
Oh, very cool.
That was established when I was 13, so it endures.
Wow.
And it's very special. I might even say sacred, but yes.
I mean, sure.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and especially with someone who you got into this profession at age 13, when you were that age.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what is that I think Backstage users are always interested in advice for child actors, how to navigate the industry. You went from relative obscurity.
Totally. I mean, I did have the advantage of growing up in New York City.
Sure.
So, a metropolis where I was, steeped in culture and took dance classes as a very little girl, and local dance companies would be mining for young talent, and they would find me or whomever else, and so that was, again, proximity really served me in that respect. But yeah, I just knew from the age of 5 that this is what I wanted to do. And I mean, my parents were visual artists, so they had a lot of, they were incredibly encouraging and respectful of my drive.
Your dream, yeah.
Yeah. But again, none of us had any fluency in the language of showbiz or anything.
Of LA.
I mean, we were real green. But I started taking acting classes, and then I went to a performing arts junior high school, a place called Professional Performing Arts School. It's public. I went in its first year of existence. Now it's very established. But and I met other kids who had kind of figured it out, and
that's helpful too.
That was really helpful. And I learned what an agent was, and how to get one, and what a headshot was, and how to make one, and all of that. So that was very instrumental in my connecting the dots. But it did feel a little miraculous too. Okay, so I had headshots made, I sent them out into the ether, and then I got a response, and then I started going on auditions and would rollerblade from audition to audition, arrive like a sweaty mess, and booking jobs, and suddenly a limousine would be rolling up to collect me on Crosby Street, and my dad would be escorting me to some screen test in LA, and we were just like, what is going on? Well,
because even for kids who do get that big break, or maybe even they get the lead on a huge show, they don't necessarily then go on to win a Golden Globe.
Right. Well, it was all, I mean, I must have done something very, very, very good in a previous life or lives to have earned this one. It's silly.
Well, and so, because I want to ask, that I'm very interested in actors' relationship with awards in general, and having been introduced to it so young.
Yeah, they're confusing.
They are, right?
Yeah.
But it seems like you feel a lot of gratitude. You certainly feel gratitude for that first.
Oh, I do. Yeah. I do. I feel, profound gratitude. But they're confusing because, it's not why we do this.
Sure. Yeah. Or it shouldn't be.
Yeah, no. I remember when I first went to the Golden Globes, at that point, I didn't really know what the Golden Globes were. They weren't as,
oh, that's true,
as famous as they are now. And but they were great because they were even more loose than they are now. But I'd never seen, this amalgam of TV and film. And I remember seeing David Hasselhoff talking to Quentin Tarantino and thinking what a mashup, which actually now makes a lot of sense. Sure. But I remember seeing all these people in these amazing glitzy gowns, and I just saw all of them at 4 a.m. in their in the mud, on their 17th take, crying their eyes out, and I was like, this is not reflective of the work, So I was really thrown, and I still feel that way. But that is the nice thing about it, is actually getting to be with your peers. And
sure,
yeah.
But I like that it's not reflective, of being on a set or of working hard.
You have to disassociate a little bit, you have to see it as another role that you're playing, and then it's fine.
That's cool too.
And then it's fun. But if you really imagine that this is an extension of your actual self, you can get into some trouble.
Yeah, and maybe just become starved for attention or starved for the limelight, or
it's very nice when it happens, and it is not really defining. There are so many performances that are epic and nuanced and important and beautiful and are never seen.
No.
Or if they are, they're not recognized for whatever reason. So,
And so what goes into it? You do a certain amount of press. You mentioned that you do less and less for a long-running show.
That's right. Yeah.
What about for your HBO movie for which you won your first Emmy Award?
Yeah. Well, that was a funny experience because, I went like total glamour girl. I remember that look. It was very golden and, I had big hair.
Right. And you mentioned it was like an acting exercise.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. And I remember Temple was there with me on the red carpet.
Yeah.
And I was a little embarrassed because I, suddenly transformed into this like alien creature, which was not all that connected to myself. Certainly not connected to Temple.
To her.
And she, is so acutely sensitive, and is vulnerable to sensory overload in like normal conditions. And here we are on a red carpet with screaming fans and flash bulbs, exploding, and I was very protective of her.
Yeah.
That was my memory of that event. Yeah, I was like, get Temple into a safe place, a cool auditorium.
It's an assault. Some of those award shows.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
there are all sorts of tricks. Like I started realizing that if you hum, you go, it makes you smile, and it kind of like is a white noise. And then I saw Robert De Niro do it, and I was like, he does it too.
Oh my God.
It's the humming thing.
I've never heard this.
He always makes fun of me when I start humming. He's like, but it's really a good trick. So, all y'all, next time you're on a stop and repeat.
I've never heard this. This feels like a scoop.
It is. I can't believe I'm actually revealing that, but yes.
Yeah, really? Did you do this at the Met Gala?
All the time. I hum. Try it. If you hum, you will smile.
And it makes you maybe more grounded in your body.
It does, and it relaxes you. Because it
can be stressful.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like everybody, why would they? But like, it can be quite intense. Yeah.
I'm wondering too, we're talking so much about being in your body and the physical parts of Carrie Mathison, for example. Does your dance training influence all of your roles?
I definitely think so. Yeah.
How so?
Well, it kind of, I use all of it. I think of it. Some roles are more physical than others, and the more physical they are, the more I enjoy them.
Gotcha.
Cool. So, like for Temple, I actually hired my friend, who is a choreographer, to help me assemble her physicality, and we did a number of exercises. I don't usually do that. I don't usually have to do that, but it was a really good thing. And I remember I had an anxiety dream at one point in the process of building her, and I had done this really good work with my friend Tamar, and I felt pretty confident in her physicality. I had defined that for myself, but I had yet to work with my dialect coach. So I had a dream where I was kind of playing her on stage, and I went out with all of that movement, in place, and I couldn't speak, and it really was like this disconnect. And I started with one, and then I built the other, and then I had to integrate the two.
Oh wow!
But it really was that kind of literal and binary.
How interesting.
So it was like that. You can't see, but tapping your head and, rubbing your belly.
Not unlike the CIA spy camp training plus the bipolar research.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to ask the question. I don't know if you've been asked this hundreds of times, but how do you cry?
How do I cry? Well, I think,
You're just a master at it. You really are. If it's an art form, you're just...
I don't know. How any actor cries, I think. I think I just happen to have a really malleable face. I have my dad's like rubber face.
Oh, cool.
It goes in many directions at once.
You mentioned muscle memory, and that's part of it?
Yeah, I just think that's how I'm designed. It's sort of fleshy. Cool. And...
just good for screen acting.
I guess so. Yeah. Plasticine or something. So it's not like I can't take credit for it. It's just
interesting.
It's just how I do.
Mm-hmm.
It's how I cry. I remember on My So-Called Life, Winnie wrote a scene where Rawaan was making fun of Angela's cry because my cry, just Claire's cry, therefore Angela's cry was remarkable,
You're right.
you know, and make funnable.
Since the very beginning of your career, then.
Yeah. So my cry and I go way back.
Yeah, it seems like you're proud of it, and
I mean, it's. I think it's just it's my anatomy.
I like the anatomy answer. Yeah, that's interesting that you have a rubber face.
I do.
I feel like you stretch your face into different ways each season of
I
Homeland.
don't do drills. I don't wake up and do my to make sure I protect its
you
elasticity.
You don't have like a daily cry or anything.
I do not have a daily cry.
That's probably good.
Yeah.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
It really is amazing how you continue to take Carrie to just new heights, and she's still somehow grounded despite all these crazy twists and turns.
Well, that's the amazing paradox, right? That she's the unreliable narrator who is the only person capable of saving the day.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good conceit.
Yeah.
I didn't make it up, but I'm playing it out over and over again, and it's fun.
Oh, it's good to hear that it's fun.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Answer from the gut or from your heart.
Okay.
Who, as of this moment, is your favorite actor?
Meryl Streep, always, forever and ever, forevermore. Sorry, not imaginative, not original, but fact.
I feel like that's the one we get most. She and Mark Rylance are always everybody's go-to favorite actors.
Yeah. Throw him in there, sure. Also Kate Blanchett and Tilda Swinton, and, like a gajillion.
Sure.
But yeah, Meryl, and always Meryl.
And she was your mom.
She was my mom.
Briefly.
Yeah.
What was the last TV show you watched?
I really have been into Atlanta. Big Little Lies I just started. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that counts as TV show, but that was rad. I guess those are the most recent.
And what about like the last amazing moment or performance you saw on screen?
I just saw Darren Brown perform last night and on stage, and then was inspired to watch him again on screen on YouTube. So he's at the fore of my brain. He's just amazing. That's just because you're asking me right this second.
Yeah.
But the last amazing performance, I mean, there have been so many. The cruel irony of making television is that you're so busy doing that, you don't have much opportunity to actually watch it.
Yeah.
My husband's pretty good on his show.
Oh, I was going to say. I was wondering if he's
pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw a little Hugh Dancy in there.
I'm obsessed with Hannibal, so I get that very much.
But it's scary to watch him be scary.
Oh, yeah.
He's a very good actor because, I'll have you know, that is not who he is in real life. Can you imagine Carrie and Cal together? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and going off of that, what is great acting to you?
Great acting is not announcing that you're acting. Actually, my friend Tamar, she choreographed a couple of dance pieces that I did. And one of her consistent notes, which I found so valuable, which is, what was it? It was, I'm impressed by you, but I'm not moved by you, right? So the idea is not to impress, to dazzle. It's to elicit feeling. And if you kind of feel for somebody, it's a very fine line. Like, you don't want to dictate that or impose it on them. You want to you have to be really present and really open and really vulnerable and really take a risk. And that's the only way you can surprise yourself as a performer and the only way you can surprise an audience. But that's the hardest thing, to resist the wink, or the urge to kind of check and make sure that you're communicating the thing you want to communicate. Sure. You just have to kind of trust that it will.
And going off of that, because we are Backstage, we're always interested in the audition advice. What is your number one piece of audition advice for someone who is an aspiring TV actor walking in the room?
Well, I actually remember talking to Rachel McAdams about this. But we liked auditioning as kids. I mean, I think it helped that we were kids and we had a day job, you know, like not all that much was riding on the audition.
Gotcha.
And, you know, it was a river of auditions and we mostly did not get callbacks, you know, so it was practice. And basically we just liked acting. So it was a chance to act.
Cool, yeah.
So turn it into that. Like, we don't have a studio as actors, you know, and turn it into your studio. It's just a place where you're working your thing out and you have an audience, which is, you know, helpful. And there are some stakes, which is also helpful.
Yeah.
But that gives you, you know, an objective that's different from just booking the job. And that reads as confidence, which is also going to help you.
Very cool. Reads as confidence, yeah.
Yeah, and because it is.
Right.
You actually don't need them or the gig. I mean, and so that would be my advice, is turn it into an exercise. And, you know, if you love it, you get to do it.
Yeah.
And it's not that consequential.
And I like that idea. It's sort of like, as a dancer, you're supposed to practice every day. It's just like,
and we don't get to do that very often. You know, like there isn't that
actors.
infrastructure. So you turn it into that.
And an audition is an opportunity because there are stakes, but you're also maybe going to get feedback.
Yeah.
Even if the feedback is just a rejection.
Right. And it might, you know, sometimes it's stupid feedback and it's false feedback, like you're too short or whatever. That's not very helpful.
Right.
But you might get something that is more insightful and that will be valuable.
Yeah.
So, I mean, easier said than done, but yeah.
And if you really love it, you'll persevere.
Yeah. And then you have 5 minutes where you get to do it.
That's excellent advice.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to tell Backstage readers or Backstage listeners, I should say?
I don't know. Keep at it.
Yeah.
I believe in the land of make-believe.
Oh, I like that. That's awesome. Claire Danes, thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, of course.
This episode is brought to you by HBO's original comedy series Insecure, starring Issa Rae. Insecure explores the Black female experience through two best friends. Issa and Molly must deal with their own real-life flaws as they attempt to navigate different worlds and cope with an endless series of uncomfortable everyday experiences. For your Emmy consideration in Outstanding Comedy Series and all other categories. So, Stranger Things broke the internet last summer when it debuted online. This incredible sci-fi horror homage to the 80s from the Duffer Brothers, starring Winona Ryder and Millie Bobby Brown and a bunch of other actors that people were sort of only vaguely familiar with. And it just started dominating our pop culture consciousness. It's one of the most exciting new shows that, even though it dropped almost a year ago, is only now eligible for Emmys. It did win the SAG Ensemble Award for Best Drama, and the person who delivered the epic speech at that award ceremony was David Harbour, who plays the police chief, Jim Hopper, on this show. And we spoke to David about his acting advice, his experience, you know, booking this amazing show, and the kind of liberties that Netflix allowed him to dig into his craft. He had some really interesting things to say about how to act sci-fi and how it relates to Shakespeare. I mean, this is a very smart Shakespeare actor who now finds himself in a sci-fi show. And his advice on how to navigate both those things was, to say the least, it was strange. It was a stranger thing. There were stranger things. That was so bad. Let's go now to our interview with David Harbour. I feel like it's my journalistic duty to ask you about what happens in season 2, but I know you can't tell me anything.
Yeah, exactly. It's my Netflix confidentiality agreement duty to not tell you anything. Otherwise, they give me calls. I do wind up like leaking things occasionally, just out of stupidity. I'll just say something, and then I'll get that horrible phone call from Netflix, which is like, David. So I can't do that anymore. Papa Netflix is watching.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, that's good because we are mostly just going to talk about season 1 of Stranger Things, which is an amazing season of television, and it's an amazing show. And you are truly doing great work in this show. Congratulations.
Oh, thanks, man. Thank you. Great.
And so I'd love to hear, first off, how did you get involved?
Well, let's see. I was doing a show for NBC, and it didn't get picked up. And I remember going through a couple months of, this is Backstage, so I like to tell actors these stories.
Oh, of course. Yes, please.
I went through about 2-3 months of feeling like I was never going to work again. And I had just been going for a while, and then finally, it just seemed like nobody was interested. I'd auditioned for a couple things where I was kind of close, but then it was just like nobody was interested in me. And then my manager had said at one point that Carmen Cuba was interested in me for a Netflix show. But it just was kind of one of those things that felt like, just something to say to an actor who's not working and who nobody cares about. It's like one of those kind of things like, hang in there, kid.
Yeah. Sure, there's a Netflix show, yeah.
Exactly. But then they did send me the script, and they sent me the pilot, which at that point was a little bit different. But in general, all the big pieces were there. Mm-hmm. And certainly this character was there. And I read it and I thought, and I hear a lot of actors say these things so I feel a little bit self-conscious. But it's true that I read it and I felt like it was the best pilot I'd ever read. Just in terms of a cinematic experience, and in terms of what my emotions went through, and also in terms of this character, starting to see, this iconic sort of figure from the 80s that were leading men that I grew up with, and sort of starting to see that etched on the page. I just got really excited. And my first thought was there's just, I don't know why Carmen's even thinking, there's no way they're going to cast me as this, because I'm not really on those lists. In terms of leads of a Netflix show, there are lists with a lot more kind of powerful, bigger resume, kind of better looking guys than me.
Sure.
And but they were like, would you come in and just read one scene with her? They're very interested in you. And so I went in, I read a scene, and then very soon after that, they told me they wanted me, and it was, it was kind of on from there. And then, so me and Winona kind of came on first, and then the pilot kind of got revamped, and we met with the writers, and the kids came on board. But yeah, that's kind of how it came about.
Well, I love that you mentioned that he's one of these iconic men from the 80s, these other projects that, of course, Stranger Things is paying homage to, even as they kind of reinvent those genres. So who to you is Jim Hopper? How would you describe him?
In terms of the archetype of those guys back in the 80s, I sort of see him a lot like Nick Nolte. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of the roles that Nick used to play, he's kind of a big bear of a guy, and he's uncomfortable, and he's angry, and he is just one of the things I really liked about playing him is that you can highlight, because he's such a deeply good guy. At the end of the day, you can really highlight the things that are not good about him, and sort of play with the audience's feelings, and sort of play with them to go wait a minute, I really don't like this guy, because he's going to do such extraordinary things that you can really, I think the more you play with that tension with the audience, the more payoff there is.
Oh, cool.
If he's very palatable and you kind of know that, he doesn't really mean it, that he's mean to kids or whatever, then you don't get as much satisfaction of being wait a minute, he's a jerk. He's a, there are even little moments that we play up a little bit in it where he's a bit homophobic, where, where she comes in and says that Will, his kids made fun of him at school. They call him a fag. And Hopper goes is he? There's this moment where it's wow, dude, a kid that's missing, you're going to stop and take a moment and really question whether the kid's gay. Does that right. What does that mean? You're not going to look as hard for him?
Right.
There's just so many kind of offshoots of douchebaggery in terms of him. It's so many offshoots of how horrible a guy is. And even that first meeting with the kids, when he goes to meet them, he's just so angry. And I just let myself sort of go into these realms of what would I not want a leading man to do in this situation? What would the villain do in this situation? So that when we got to the when we got to this stuff of him being heroic, and even in fact his heroic turn comes, and I really like this in the scripts, and his turn comes not from anything noble, which I think is very human. Like, he doesn't do anything out of nobility. He does something because people start lying to him. And he hates when people lie to him and try to manipulate him. So it becomes a very personal vendetta. It's to save this kid. It's not about anything noble or anything about his profession. It's just like, I don't like people lying to me. And like, that anger fuels this sort of heroism. And that to me, again, is very human, very grounded, very real, very interesting to me in terms of like a psychology of someone, like a true pathology, as opposed to something that just is, this guy's the hero.
Right. Well, and that's so cool that where your character is going to end up by the end of the season, and you know that he is going to have this somewhat heroic arc, especially in his last episode when we do kind of learn the extent of what happened to his daughter. And so you go for those more villainous things, but that means that for those of us who are going back and rewatching, as many Netflix fans do and many Stranger Things fans do, I'm sure, like you see that performance in a new light, and that's the advantage of having that arc, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's certainly the advantage of having it all written before you go in to shoot.
Right.
Because I've done television, because television is episodic, by its nature. And
Absolutely.
So sometimes you'll go in and they'll just like halfway through the season be like, okay, he's going to be like this. And you're like, wait a minute.
I didn't make that choice. Yeah.
Right. And so the great thing about the Duffers is that even though little things may change, we're all very committed to knowing the end game right from the beginning. Cool. And even in terms of this season, now that we know we have a bigger palette, like I know where Hopper's going to end up, like all the way down. So in terms of like laying pipe, like it's very important to me to know where someone goes, because it defines sort of who they are and how they behave and why they get to where they are. Like one of my jobs, I think, as an actor, which I feel like the responsibility is less taken on for this because of the episodic nature of what we do. But I feel like one of the responsibilities of the actor, not just the writer, but more the actor, is to show why a human being ends up where they are. I think that's actually one of our jobs, is to be like,
that's excellent.
Look, these are the choices that you make. This is who you are. This is what happens to you. So therefore you end up here. Because I think that's the moral compass, or the true like artistry of what we do, is to interpret the human psyche and to be like, if you do these actions, this is where you will end up. Or if you do these actions, this is where you'll end up. Like, and to really have a point of view about human beings in that way, and how they operate in society and how they behave and what the results of their actions are, is generally, I think, a lot in Hollywood left to the job of the writer. But I feel like the actor, when given the chance, can take on a lot of that responsibility too, and can come up with some pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, and as you say, certainly in the context of a project where you know where it starts and you know where it ends. Like in that way, is filming a season of Netflix, is it more like filming a movie than filming network television?
Yeah, it's like a really long movie, a movie.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, it very much is. Although, there is a television moment where you do have, you are understanding that at the ends of each episode, you do have cliffhangers, and you do have like there is momentum within each episode that you're considering. Yeah. But so it's not just a movie, but it is much more cinematic, and really it's the only way to work now. Like, I really don't want to go back to not knowing what my character is going to become, because it's so unsatisfying to play. You wind up just having to play scenes in isolation and make almost arbitrary choices just based on like attractiveness. Like, oh, I'll say this strong, or I'll say this funny, or like, you know what I mean? As opposed to like, oh no, like this is what leads to this, what leads to this. And it's much more fulfilling to do it this way.
And in that way, it's also similar to doing a play, correct?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You master a character.
An entire narrative,
Right. And you've done a ton of theater, and you're a Tony-nominated actor. And I'm wondering, where does all of that theater training come from in terms of your screen work, but particularly for Stranger Things?
I mean, it's interesting. Like, I think I'm now at this point where I'm very grateful for my path. And that has not always been the case. I'm like 42 now. And so there was certainly a time like in my 30s and certainly in my 20s when I was, felt like I had been, like I didn't sort of achieve what other of my colleagues were achieving in terms of notoriety or in terms of being seen or being noticed. And I felt, resentment about that or feeling like I'd been left behind. And part of it was that I'd made this choice to stay in New York. And I mean, I made the choice and also the choice made me. Like, it's not like Hollywood was really clamoring to have me out there. It was more like New York theater appreciated me and I appreciated New York theater. And so, but now that I see it, I feel like there was I think because the money stakes are so much lower, and I think because they give you a freedom to play outside your type so much more, I feel like it's such a great way to really develop your artistic voice and to really develop the way you see the world. And so that's been very important. And also, like, it allows you, in terms of like the sci-fi genre stuff, or even like comic book genre stuff, like a lot of great plays sort of allow you to play with those concepts, like Shakespeare and stuff, kings and queens, like really, classical theater really embraces the sci-fi genre. And it's part of the reason why, like, you get someone like Patrick Stewart or in Star Trek, or Ian McKellen in like Lord of the Rings. Like, the reason why these great Shakespearean actors can really take on the sci-fi genres, because like if you play Henry V, it's going to be larger than life in the same way that this genre stuff is larger than life. But you have to try to find ways to continue to ground it in like a very human experience. And I feel like, so when you grow up doing a lot of Shakespeare and a lot of plays, it helps with that stuff a lot. And so that's been a great payoff for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've never thought of that that is the reason why Ian McKellen is a supervillain in X-Men, and he's Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings, and he's also Macbeth. Like, those are of the same ilk in a way. Yeah,
totally. It's all these like big, larger than life, like even the language is larger, like everything's just big, and he has a way to ground it and make it really believable and really real that I think comes from all that training.
Yeah, and the same can be said for Stranger Things, which I think is, certainly there's lots of bells and whistles with the sci-fi and the horror and the many homages to the 80s, but I think it's very grounded and real. That's at least how it seems to me.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm most proud of is the humanness of it. Like, I don't know that it would work if it was just the sci-fi. Like, I really feel like the relationships between the kids and the relationships between the adults and the teens and everybody, sort of that's what you're really watching for. I mean, the scares and the thrills and all the intrigue and the mystery is great, but if you didn't have that heart that I feel like the Duffers really write into the script, you wouldn't have much of a show. Yeah,
totally. I want to ask, too, about your relationship with awards. First of all, congratulations on winning a SAG award for Stranger Things. That was so electrifying and so much fun. Your acceptance speech was one for the ages, truly.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
And so you've been essentially promoting Stranger Things Season 1 since it dropped last year. What does it look like in terms of going into the 2017 Emmys, the first time that the show is eligible?
It's all sort of weird. Like, I don't really know. It's kind of a lovely thing. Like, it's a lovely little thing. It's not really my focus. I don't really know how to do it very well. I like talking to people about the work. I like talking to people about the show. So if it gives me an opportunity to do that, I also feel like the show, if it allows, like the themes of the show and what I feel like the show expresses about inclusiveness and about not letting people feel alone. If awards and things help the show in that way, or help people realize that, and the other thing I really like is a lot of us are relatively unknown, and if those people win award, and we're not the best looking or the most polished people, and I feel like if those types of people win awards, I feel like it's sort of a good thing. There are lots of positives to like the award thing, and also I do feel like it's a platform to kind of say something fun that you feel, which I was able to do in the SAG speech.
Yeah, the SAG speech. Yeah. Well, I like that you said that you like talking about the show. And so in the quote-unquote campaign of campaigning for an Emmy or campaigning for any award for a show and trying to get that show attention and therefore awards, you like doing the press, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially when it's about I'm not so good. I mean, people aren't that interested though, which is nice about me. Like in terms of there are some people press-wise who people are very interested in their tabloid lives or like in their,
right.
who they're dating or whatever. For me, in general, people are just interested in like the show, so that's been a very good thing.
Yeah.
And I really do like talk. I'm one of those actors where a lot of people don't. Like a lot of people who I really respect are very private about it and think that it's indulgent to talk about it. But like, I love talking process. I love, acting. I love talking about acting. I love talking about the complexities of it. I love talking about the complexities of like narrative and like what people are doing and what we all came together to do. I think it's really fascinating.
Absolutely.
So I can talk about it all day.
Exactly. I mean, we certainly appreciate it here at Backstage. I mean, I know you've used Backstage in the past, correct? You circled audition notices and
Oh, yeah. When I was first in the city, when was this? 1997, 98. I came down to New York, and I would get Backstage like every week. It was still like a paper back then.
Right.
And I would get it like every week and, circle auditions and go to like EPAs at the Equity Building and be non-ec and like wait all day to try to get seen and then get sent home.
Yep.
And I found like a couple jobs. Like I definitely went in for a couple things with the like little non-ec shows that I did when I was in New York. That's
so cool. Yeah, and you said to me once before that your advice to actors is just to keep banging on the door of opportunity. And I think you even said literally banging on the door, like you bugged the Public Theater over and over again to get a job, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I guess everybody's path is unique and I really don't know if what works for one person works for another, but I do know that if I rounded up all the people that I know who are very successful actors, we all have kind of one thing in common. And that's the idea that like, we all did crazy like that people are like, no, you didn't.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, I did. Like, I went to that meeting and I just walked in and I started a monologue. And people are like, what? You didn't do that. You get arrested. You're
right.
like, yeah, I know. No, I actually did. So I feel like that's the thing where, it has to be your own version of that's creative. But I feel like at the end of the day, as much as people hate it, they still kind of admire it. That kind of tenacity and that kind of need and that kind of hunger will take you a long way. It'll take you a lot further than being respectful and kind of sitting in your apartment waiting. Yeah. That won't take you anywhere.
Waiting for the phone to ring. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's true. Yeah. Well, wonderful. That's excellent advice for actors. One last question for you, and it's a big, broad question, but what is great acting to you?
That's a great question. Great acting to me, it's funny, like it's changed over the years. I used to feel like I wanted to know exactly what people were feeling at the moment, or if people were very emotional. I thought that emotion was great acting. And really what I'm starting to realize now is that what I really want to learn from an actor is about human behavior and about consequences and about pathology. So therefore, like I want an actor who not only can feel and express things, but who has a consciousness to what they're setting out to create, so that when I watch it at the end of the day, I can interpret life through it. So what I want when I watch great acting is at the end of the day to feel like I can live my life in a different way. In other words, I've learned something about living my life that I can take into the world. And it's something that is somewhat conscious and somewhat subconscious.
Right.
But I want to learn. I think great acting hits me on a gut level of like, oh, I get it. That's what human beings are like. Oh, I get it. That's the way I should live.
Yeah.
And I think it's very, very hard to do. And I think it's rare that you come across that. But I think that's great acting. And it combines like behavior, emotion, lots of different elements to come up with sort of a palette and kind of a treatise on like how to live.
That's amazing. I've asked this question so many times, and that was a totally brilliant answer. So thank you.
Thanks.
David Harbour. And thank you so much for taking the time. I know you got to get back to, you're literally filming season 2.
We are, I know. I'm gonna go fight some monsters right now. Or maybe not. No spoilers.
You're so busted. Well, go have fun and keep breaking legs. Congratulations on all the show's success.
All right, thanks, man. Good talking to you.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
That was David Harbour of Netflix's Stranger Things. Isn't he a great interview?
Absolutely.
He's so talented.
Yeah, and humble.
And just blowing my mind about Shakespeare and sci-fi.
Yeah, and I loved his honesty about his approach in his 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
And how that changed.
That's something that actors in their 20s and 30s can really take that and run with it.
Absolutely.
Thank you also to Claire Danes, who marched over from her New York City apartment to sit with us in the studio.
Yeah.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, David. I guess that brings us to the end of our first episode.
And good job to you, Jack.
Oh, good job to you, Jamie.
I didn't do very much.
Congratulations. That's a lie. That's a lie. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe for more interviews from the front lines of the 2017 Emmy race. In the Envelope is recorded at Lotus Productions and Hyperbolic Audio in New York City. Thanks as always to producer, editor, and all-around podcast whiz Jamie Muffett, and to the team at Backstage, aka the most trusted name in casting. Peter Rappaport, Ryan Remstad, Jesse Balashak, Francis Ramos, Rawaan Alkhatib, and especially the magnificent Kasey Howe. For more industry news and awards coverage, head over to Backstage.com. Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another glimpse in the Envelope.